In the name of the Father, and Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God, amen. Coming back again to the book of Acts, and I think just touching on a couple of things from chapter 15 and then moving on to chapter 16, which, from now on, it gets more and more dynamic and active and surprises. Well, it's not surprise, we know the story, as we're just saying, but still, just the action and, as you look at it again, as you're studying it, like probably a lot of things that you've read before or known before start to actually come up as why did this happen? How did this happen? So you start to kind of interact more with the text itself. So again, chapter 15 was where the dispute happened and the council happened, and then people, or we've talked about Peter talking first. We talked about Paul and Barnabas sharing, and then we talked about James, the head, the bishop of Jerusalem, finalizing everything and then coming up with the final resolution. It pleases the Spirit and us, and then you do those specifically 4 things. So before we move on and finish chapter 15, I just want to go back again to those what was in the letter. So again, remember that there was that dispute about Judaism, and then they have to be circumcised in order to be Christian, and then these people who came from challenging the Gentiles and the newcomers, and then as you said, Paul and Barnabas went back to the church to kind of resolve that issue, and then where they came up with this, and then they wrote the letter and sent the letter with whom? Remember? Judas and Silas. Judas and Silas. So again, in 1531, let's read from 28 again. 1528. For it has seemed good to the Holy Spirit and to us to lay on you no greater burden than these requirements, right? So what are these requirements? Again, that you abstain from what has been sacrificed to idols, and from blood, and from what has been strangled, and from sexual immorality. If you keep yourselves from these, you will do well. Farewell. Right? I'll go back again to this. You will do well. It's whether you do well, meaning like once you do this, you'll do well, or you'll be doing well by keeping this, right? It's more of the second. You'll be doing well by keeping this, which brings another dimension of that. How James, the church, and the Holy Spirit are also kind of respecting the Church of Antioch and the Gentiles, right? Because we will talk about this here, touch on it before we move on. So when they were sent off, they went down to Antioch, and having gathered the congregation together, they delivered the letter. Right? And when they had read it, they rejoiced because of its encouragement. And Judas and Silas, who were themselves prophets, encouraged and strengthened the brothers with many words. Okay. And then Judas sells who were, themselves prophets, encouraged and strengthened the brothers with many words. And after they had spent some time, they were sent off in peace by the brothers to those who had sent them. Right? So they went and have that message. Paul and Barnabas remained in Antioch for a while, teaching and preaching the word of the Lord with many others. And then after some time, they started their second mission, right? So before we go there, let's just go back again to the idea of the 4 things that the church, the Holy Spirit, and James can announce in the letter. Those 4 things, which are, again, the abstain from what has been sacrificed to idols, from blood, from what has been strangled, and from sexual immorality. What do you see in those 4 things? I think we probably talked about them before, but just kind of good to mention them again.
Hey, Abuna.
Hannah, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Welcome. Good, good, good.
Did we say that those, because those four things were.
Say again, Julia.
So those four things were repeated in like verse, 20, yeah, verse 20.
Yes.
Earlier on, so they're obviously consolidating the message we were talking about, like, this is pertaining to idols, so it's talking about like specifically not.
Right, because remember, this is again chapter 15. This is again what will be on the letter that they will send. So that's the message that will be read. So it's very, very specific about, four things, right? Now, I was just reading something about this. I think it was Origin who says like, okay, well, that doesn't say anything or mention anything about not killing anybody. So does that mean that killing is okay? Like all what you have to do is refrain from this, this, and this, and this, right? And doesn't bring the whole picture, right? So is there something missing here? Definitely not. It can't be this way, right? But they're talking about specific thing, right? And talking about the how to deal with those who are from the Gentiles who are coming to the faith. So instead, we're talking about, observing the law of Moses and observing the circumcision. Say like, okay, this is not necessary, but what's necessary for this is those four things, right? The four things, just to kind of stay focused, are important for a couple of things. Number one, for the Jews, these are the law. This is the Torah, right? Not to commit adultery, not to eat anything with its blood, and the also anything or any worship to someone else or some other thing other than God, right? But also to the Gentiles, it's more of telling them, don't do something that, or even though you can consider this as okay to do it, that's not in your, like, not in your law, but you want to be very, very careful not to stumble your brothers, the Jews, right? Because that for the Jew is something very big, right? Eating something with the blood, because we know the blood life is in the blood. So don't eat anything with its life. Same thing with anything that is strangled, because that means that strangled animal that is dead still has the blood. So that's why the kosher thing is you have to actually slaughter and then kind of like pour out the blood totally, and then in order to do this. So what he's trying to say here is actually talking to both. For the Jew, right? These are things that are very important in the Torah, in the law, and for the Gentiles. Yet you're not again obligated to do this, but be careful that this is something. If you do it, it will stumble your brother. Right? And it's the same idea. St. Paul talked about this a lot in Romans and in Corinthians also, right? If you remember that, for example, if you look at Romans 14:15, for example, just kind of to be on the same page, what Paul talked about this and how he addressed this. In Romans 14:15, you see that he is, if somebody can read it real quick.
Yet if your brother is grieved because of your food, you are no longer walking in love. Do not destroy food, the one for whom Christ died.
Yes. Yeah. So what he's trying to say is it's not about, the food is not gonna, what you eat is not really going to, save you or not, right? It's not what you eat. But again, the idea here that make sure not to stumble your brother, right? Same thing actually again in 1 Corinthians chapter 10 and 28 and 29. You see this very clear also there, where he talks about 1 Corinthians 10, 28 and 29, about those who have a weak conscience, right? Somebody can read it also.
But if anyone says to you, this was offered to idols, do not eat it for the sake of the one who told you, and for a conscious sake, for the earth is the Lord's and its fullness. Consciousness, I say, not your own, but that of the other. For why is my liberty judged by another man's conscience?
Yes. And that's a very, very big topic, by the way. Like, why would I do something that I think it's okay, but yet I shouldn't do it because of what? Because of my brother, right? Because of my sister, because those who are surrounding me, that they might, I just had actually a text from somebody from Lagos today, one of the servants, that he's really, how it's a tropical weather, and he gets lots of headaches and stuff like that. And with the fasting, you're not supposed to say it or to do anything or to drink water, and he gets dehydrated. So he's asking me like how rigid that is. And yet his main point is when he drinks water, other people start to ask him, "Aren't you fasting?" Right? So that was a good kind of like a practical situation for something like that. So, yes, we make sure that that the rule applies and flexible based on how you feel and your medical health and condition. Yet also be careful not to drink water in front of everybody else. Again, not that you're hiding because you're doing something wrong, but be considerate because somebody else. That's exactly what St. Paul says. For their conscious, right? Oh, how could so and so, and they are servants and they are whatever, and here they're drinking water in front of everybody else. So again, it's not about the water, but be careful, be conscious of the other. And I think you can apply this across the board, right? For everything else, for everything, what we can do while there's nothing wrong with that. I'm free, I can do whatever. But what do you think of that? Like, why would they actually even consider the other?
Loving brother, you will cause him to stumble.
Yes. And then the idea back again that we are all one body, right? So if a member stumbles, a member is weak, then that somehow impacts me, right? And also the whole idea about our, the mind of Christ. Like we always say, we should have the mind of Christ. Mind of Christ is what? That he emptied himself for us, right? Which is totally countercultural, yeah? Like, well, I am thirsty, I can drink whatever, right? Or I'm hungry, I can do whatever. Or why would I care about somebody else, right? It's their problem, not my problem. But it's the whole, understanding of Christianity is that I am actually putting myself, we're talking about that yesterday on campus, right? How love that sacrifices, the love that gives, the love that actually considers the other, right? So this is something just wanted to touch on that's kind of like, because we can just go, okay, well, they are very strict or they are very clear. Here is what you have to do and here is what you should do and what you shouldn't do. But actually there's a lot of teaching in that resolution that they put together. It's not, again, and that's why I was saying, in verse 29 at the end of the letter, that you abstain from what has been sacrificed to idols and from blood and from what has been strangled and from sexual immorality. And then this part, if you keep yourselves from these, you will do well. Okay? Again, that the understanding of the text in the original is you do well when you keep those things. Right? So in a way, even the letter is not kind of written with the language of the obligation, yet it is in the language of love, right? What is it in your translation, guys? End of verse 29.
That you abstain from things offered to idols, from blood, from things strangled, and from sexual immorality. If you keep yourselves from these, you will do well. Okay, if you keep yourself from these, you do well, which is the same here. But I was looking at the translation, and the Arabic also translation said, you do well if you keep those things, right? So it's not like you better do these things. So the language itself is also a kind of language of love, right? Why? Because this is written now they're taking this to the Gentiles. So they are telling them, please be aware, be careful, be considerate of your brothers. Yes, we are telling you, you don't have to go to circumcision, which is, we're compromising this, if I may say that. Now your part is doing what? Consider also that, right? Because to a Gentile, they have no problem eating whatever, right? So again, that could be like another obligation on them. But he's trying to tell them, don't take this as an obligation, take it as well, that this will make you all do well as the body of Christ.
right? And that's what we talked about yesterday also, Nader, right? You know, the beauty or the truth, which comes first. The truth is don't do this, but don't look at it as just an obligation. Look at it as this is something beautiful and something good, something love for the body, right? And I think that would be the answer. Like, why would I care about somebody else? Right? Well, you don't have to care. Right? You want to live on your own, you know, but it's not love. Right? So he's in a way, the letter is taking them from one level to another level, to a deeper level of actually be considerate. Remember, you are part of that. And if you do this, you'll all be, you know, you'll do well when you consider all those things together. Any thoughts or additions for that? Okay, so I have a question just was sent to me here. So again, it's more of the sequence of events. Like if we go back to the end or towards the second half of chapter 15, we know that they were at Antioch, they had this problem, and then they said, okay, let's go to Jerusalem in order to consult with the elders, with the church leaders, and then they did this. And then from there, it says they sent them back. So then from there, they went back to Antioch again, and then they sent the letter with, again, as you said, Silas and Judas, right? So that's you see this in chapter 15. It says that in verse 25 that, you know, as we've seen this, you know, we are sending this with Barnabas and Paul. So the church sent them, and they also sent Judas and Silas, and they are taking the letter. So in verse 25, talking about that we have sent them, which is Barnabas and Paul, right? It has seemed good to us, having come to one accord, to choose men and send them to you with our beloved Barnabas and Paul, right? So they send the church in Jerusalem, send them, and send with them also whom? Silas and Judas with the letter itself. So that's how they went back again, ended back in Antioch. Okay. Okay. The other thing is, again, these were very, very important to their practice as Jude, like, okay, not to eat things with the blood and everything like that. And that's why, you know, inspired by the Holy Spirit, this really is not required at all, because that doesn't, you know, again, if you remember, we talked about this before, the capital T and the small t tradition, right? The capital T tradition that are actually what involved and touch the whole story and whole concept of salvation, right? The small t is again what we do, like, you know, some of it is cultural, some of it is just teaching, but that doesn't have anything to do with the story of salvation itself, right? And that's, we'll get to this when we jump to chapter 16 and your question from last time, Paul and Timothy, and why he circumcised him, right? So with that, not every cultural thing is not even related to the small t or the capital T. There are just some cultural things that, you know, from, you know, again, like back home in Egypt, from the impact of Islam, for example, on the culture and on the people, that things start to kind of like find its way to become part of that, while it is not. So we need to very much distinguish these things, that this doesn't have anything to do with that. I'm just hearing something from just a video clip that I found about who was it? Abuna George from Saint Mark Cleopatra in Egypt, and somebody is sending that message. You know, what should I do before communion or after communion? And, you know, can I drink water? Can I brush my teeth? Like, you know, and he was kind of like, you know, frustrated. Like, you know, did we bring Christianity to this level of just what are we spitting and what this is nonsense. What we're taking is mystery. It's mystery, right? It's beyond what we can understand. It's not going to be limited to, physical appearance or, scratching myself or spitting something. This is all nonsense, right? But again, going back to the point again, if these things are really kind of, bother the conscience of somebody, and they think that this is what it is, that's fine. Let them do that. But that has nothing else to do with the actual mystery itself.
Hi, bueno. So, this is Doreen. So, aren't we supposed like to clarify for these people, like even if it hurts their conscience, like isn't it wrong to just stay silent and let them do what they're doing without understanding?
No, it's not. Definitely, it's part of the church responsibility of correct teaching, right? But some people will never accept that. And they get so irritated. And you get just the idea or just the fact like, oh, you can actually do that. There's no problem with that. Like how and why and this and that is start to get irritated. So it's fine, But delivering the message and putting the correct understanding is 100% important. But when you try to find, again, this is where the wisdom comes. If you find yourself going to get sucked into a very heated argument about something that, they're not going to change their mind, so let it be. Let it be, right? So that's where we want to be careful with how much we argue about stuff like that or try to convince somebody that they're not gonna, that's they grew up with that mindset and it's rooted in their mind and that's what it is. That's fine. That's fine.
So in this case, we still have to like not do it in front of them to not hurt them, or is it because we already clarified and they're free to not do it, but I don't have to not do it?
Again, like there's some of these traditions, or anyway, you don't do it in public, right? Like like you brush your teeth in the morning before you come to church. You're not going to come to church and tell everybody, hey, by the way, I brushed my teeth today. Like here I am. No, it's not going to happen, right? But if there is an explanation for this, that's something you're doing in front of the people, I think it's good to explain it. Yeah, that's part of the teaching. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. So they clear this, they send them to with the letter to the people, they start to go and to give them the good news about, what, you don't have to worry about this. This is just a burden that you don't have to worry about it. Just enjoy the good news, enjoy the salvation, enjoy Christ, right? That's what it is. Enjoy. And I think we need to do that. A lot of times we get so much caught up with am I doing the right thing or not, or is this what I'm supposed to do or not? While we actually, that takes away from us the actual joy of being one with him, right? So that's something important. Like, okay, don't let your conscience kind of take away the joy of the reality that we are being one with him. With this, they kept going, and again, what's important here is how specifically Paul and Barnabas, as I said before, they never waste any chance to preach, right? So they went to Antioch to deliver the message along with the other two, but then it says here again, after they had spent some time, they were sent off in peace by brothers to those who had sent them. But Paul and Barnabas remained in Antioch teaching and preaching the word of the Lord with many others also. It's like they never get sick of that, right? They never get, okay, well, and again, as you see on the map here, I'll share this with you guys. It's a big distance. It's actual quite a travel, right? So, but yet every opportunity they have, they will continue to teach and preach. And many others come and bringing them to the church.
Hi, Abuna. Sorry, I have another question out of curiosity. Like, why did they send the letter with Silas and Judas and not with St. Paul and Barnabas? Because they were going anyway. That's
a good question. So what happened here is, if you go back again to the text, it has seemed to go to what did we say, 25? And then men who have risked, that's Barnabas and Paul. Yeah, we have therefore sent Judas and Silas, who themselves will tell you same things by word of mouth. So that's important because the church here is trying to reinforce the fact that this is what the church has done. And other people, again, people might say that Paul and Barnabas are they have their own way on the whole story, or maybe they are delivering their own theology or their own teaching. But now they're sending two other people, right, that from the church. And as we'll see, Silas is actually another Roman person, so he's Gentile himself, right? So they're reinforcing the fact that this is actually the church understanding and the church teaching. It's not just the same two that you had an issue with them, so they want you to know what happened with them, and then you brought them back again. Now, here we are, we came and telling you something else. So it is the reinforcement of the unity of the church and the unity of the decision that these people are sent from the Church of Jerusalem in order to say the same thing that is delivered to you. Right? So it's more of that oneness of the opinion, and people are not just, people again, might have some kind of, hard feelings towards Paul and Barnabas being there already, and we know how much they were under the attack, and Paul has been almost killed by being stoned, right? So they might not be able even to accept that from them anymore. So it's the wisdom of the Spirit and the wisdom of the church at the time to send other people who are having the same message, yet they are new to the crowd there. They haven't seen them before, they don't know them before, yet they can all come together and deliver the same message.
Makes sense. Thank you.
So with that, starting the second mission for Paul, and let me bring this to you guys also. So I can share it with you. But here it is. Okay. So this is on the screen it will be on the screen shortly here. Let's read the text first and then we move on. So 15:36. After some days, Paul said to Barnabas, let us return and visit the brothers in every city where we proclaim the word of the Lord and see how they are. So let's return. Now, where are Paul and Barnabas at this point? They're still they said they're in Antioch, and then they went and they wanted to go and visit the churches that they established in that area, right? So, and that will actually open a door for something else. So I'm trying to share this with you guys online here. So hold on just 1 second. Okay. So this is for the online people. Again, it's pretty much the same here, but the blue arrows on my computer here for the Zoom is the second mission, right? The second mission where they went, and you can see it here also. They went from Jerusalem, so they were in Jerusalem. They went all the way to Antioch, right? And then from there went to Antioch of Syria. Remember, because we have two Antioch, right? There's Antioch on up north, but that's not the one. Antioch of Syria, that's where they went, and then they kind of visiting the churches that are around that area, right? In the green where it says Syria, and then from there they will start to go again. What they wanted to do is to go further into Galatia, which is in the top east of the map. You don't see where Galatia is, and Bithynia and Pontus, but that's where we'll hear in chapter 16 that the Spirit was prevented them from there. And what happened is they actually crossed they crossed the sea into Europe, and that was the first time leaving Minor Asia, leaving the preaching there and going into Philippi and going to Macedonia and this area here. Right?
So is Asia Minor considered Turkey now?
Yes, Asia Minor is Turkey, right? Yeah. So they went again from Jerusalem to Antioch. From Antioch went the opposite way as they came back, because remember from before they went to Lystra and then Derbe. Now they went from Antioch to Tarsus, Tarsus to Derbe, Derbe to Lystra, and then they wanted to go right of the screen into Bithynia and Galatia and all that area, but actually they went more towards the north here, which is Troas and Mysia, and then that's when they saw the vision, and a man said, come and help us, and they crossed into the Aegean Sea, into north of Greece and that area, and stayed there, and then came back again. Right? So it's good to see this and to understand exactly the dynamic of all that. So if we look at the text again, this is also where the dispute happened between Paul and Mark again. He left them early, and then now Barnabas wanted to take him with him to join for that mission, but Paul stood and said, no, the one who left us before, he has no room with us, he cannot come anymore. And we'll talk about this a little bit here also before we move on. So after some days, Paul said to Barnabas, let us return and visit the brothers in every city where we proclaim the word of the Lord and see how they are. Now Barnabas wanted to take with them John called Mark, but Paul thought best not to take with them one who had withdrawn from them in Pamphylia and had not gone with them to the war. And there arose a sharp disagreement, so that they separated from each other. Barnabas took Mark with him and sailed away to Cyprus, went back again to Cyprus, all the way down in the Mediterranean. But Paul chose Silas and departed, having been commended by the brothers to the grace of the Lord. And went through Syria, Cilicia, strengthening the churches. Syria and Cilicia, so around Antioch area, basically Syria and Lebanon right now, and then from there going to continue there. What do you think of, maybe we should pause for a minute and discuss the situation between Barnabas, Paul, and Mark. What do you think of that? So again, there is a dispute from before. Barnabas, why do you think, first of all, Barnabas wanted to take Mark with him? Remember.
Are they related?
Yes, go ahead, Albert.
Sorry, Abuna. I was gonna say, are they related?
Yes. Number one, Mark and Barnabas are cousins. So there is that kind of like a blood thing that's going on between them. Barnabas kind of felt, I shouldn't leave my cousin, and I'll take him with me, and I want him with me to continue. That's one thing. What else? What else?
Abuna, all of this happened in Antioch, right? There's
Yes.
in Antioch.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Remember what's the meaning of Barnabas?
Son of encouragement.
Encouragement, right? So what is happening here? Giving the fact or understanding that Mark kind of like, failed or, got tired or got distracted or whatever and didn't want to continue with them. So what is Barnabas doing here? Encouraging him, right? And that's very, very important, right? There's one thing that I was reading about this, and it's very good to actually look at it and try to apply it in our lives, And again, related a little bit on what we were talking about on campus yesterday. It says, Paul looked at people and asked, what can they do for God's work? Right? While Barnabas looked at people and asked, what can God's work do for them? Right? So Paul would have said, what can they do? What can Mark do for God's work? He failed us already at one point. Right? But Barnabas, the son of encouragement, right, says what can God's work do for him? Right? How can we apply this concept in our own personal struggles and need to be encouraged? Truth and love. Right?
Yep.
Yes, exactly. Yes. It keeps coming back again. Right? The truth is, you failed us, you didn't commit, you're out. Right? Not like, no, maybe maybe give you another chance. Yes. What does that understanding do to us, help us? Again, on a personal level and in a relational level. What do you think? Again, this is chapter 15 and verse 39 and 40. 38, 39, and 40. What do you think? How can you balance that, right? Between, well, the truth is this, yet the love says something else. Well, again, as we were discussing yesterday, they're both needed, they're both valid, but then, that's where the spirit comes more and say, okay, well, I think this is what needs to be done now. Right? Why? Because the final goal for all this is not just who's gonna go or where or what or how, but the final goal is what? Is to share Christ with people. Right? And yet again, you can see the logic behind it. Well, we don't want to take somebody on a mission that will gonna bring us down, and we can have make things harder and slow us down and bring some more discouraging atmosphere and attitude. Like us who've been in missions before, you know how that is really hurtful, right? Like I don't want somebody with me that's negative. It's already hard. It's already tough. So if you can't focus, just stay behind, right? Yet, I mean, we've seen it. How many times actually people are with us on a mission trip, right? And we think that they're going to be like a distraction or heavy load or something, but yet you see God's working with them in a beautiful way, and sometimes not even till the last day of the mission, right? Like just wait, just keep focused. And if we're looking at our life as mission, so not necessarily going on a mission, we're not Paul or Barnabas, or maybe we're not involved in some kind of any mission activities. But I think if we look at our daily life and that's what we try to do with SALT, right? Like we are living on a mission, right? Sometimes you're discouraged. Sometimes, you think that you can't do it. Yet God doesn't look at us this way. Right? At no point God will look at you and say, what? You're not fit for that. Go sit on the bench. Yeah. No.
I like, I'm on the Katina app. And
Yes.
it shows commentaries. And John Chrysostom says the Paul seems to be exasperated with Barnabas and Mark.
Yes. Big fight. Yes. That's another thing, which is like both of them, they were able to bring the whole church in unity, while both of them, they are not able to get unity. Which else it could be. It could be, right? It's not necessarily people, will always be on the same page, right? And actually that brought in what happened with this, it brought another team to the mission. So instead of only Paul and Barnabas, now we have Paul and Silas and Barnabas and Mark. So you have two instead of one team. Right?
And that's the same Mark that came to Egypt, right?
Yes. But from here, they went to Cyprus, and then he went back again to Cyrene, and then made all his way to Alexandria again. So yes, we started the Church of Alexandria.
And Paul said no.
Yes. Actually, one of the commentaries that I was reading, that would have changed the whole history. Yeah.
I actually heard something about this, Abuna, before, that like we don't like church divisions and we feel bad about them, but sometimes it's not really division, it's a multiplication.
Yes, the thing is, you need to come back again to reconciliation. That's what happened with Paul and Mark. We see this, later on, right? In the book of Acts and Paul's epistle, he said, bring Mark, right? So, and my beloved. And so the problem is when it remains without exactly reconciliation, right? So you could imagine again, Barnabas kept all the way kind of, calling Paul names, right? Or cursing or something. No, but okay, well, that's what happened. Yes, we're not in agreement, but let's, again, live the moment, right? Enjoy what God has given us now, right? They both went and start to preach and start to enjoy what happened. And then, yes, maybe that's God's thing. And then that brought back again reconciliation specifically between Paul and Mark later on. Sorry, we're going to say something? Yes.
Between that time when the contention happened and then they reconciled, obviously it was many years.
Yes.
And a lot of experiences. So is there like, I don't know, like a way to know, for example, if we were in St. Paul's shoes, to know that you're not just being stubborn or you're not just being too harsh by saying no and deciding to, go separate ways versus that. And now that we're reading about it in hindsight, we know that this was ultimately for
God's plan for good, yes.
So,
But
and now
at the
it's-
moment, you'll see this more and more as we go to chapter 16, because that goes along with another thing that's happening, which is God opening doors, right? So what I'm trying to say, if that was actually just Paul being stubborn, right? And this is just because of his own pride, I really got hurt. How would that new Mark thing, like, don't you know who I am and how you can do this? And it's all because of what? Ego and pride and just a personal thing. Definitely the spirit doesn't work there, right? The spirit, remember, the spirit is the spirit of what? Unity, right? So yes, it seems like there is a division, but actually it was in a way leading to unity later on, right? So if that was for the wrong reason, right? If that was for just to punish him or because Paul was hurt or never, for sure the spirit will never open a door for him to continue.
St. Paul's.
For both, but specifically for Paul, because at that point Mark was just following Barnabas basically. So he's just like following along. Yet God opened the door for him to Egypt after that.
So like in today's world, if a division was to happen or a disagreement on.
Yes.
And then people were to go separate ways, if when we go their separate ways, doors are being opened or not being opened.
Yes.
That would be the indication.
That's an indication, definitely. Yes. Because God doesn't like division. The spirit is not the spirit of division. If any division leads to something else, but you see it's dry, you see there is no fruit, you see that there is nothing happening. Well, it started wrong.
So that's when you would know that
That
was to.
yes. Yeah. And again, we can apply this to even on a personal level, like in relationships, for example, right? In marriage, for example, if something like, okay, no, it's not just like we're disagreeing, but there is more of a personal pride that's involved, right? It's not about like we're trying just to kind of refine or come together in order to understand or to come to resolve a conflict. But no, it's because I don't think that you are right. I am wrong. I am right. You are wrong, right? Then you see the consequences of that, right? But it's important to understand here what happened, that it's number one, again, as you're saying, division at one point or conflict at one point doesn't mean actual division, but it means, yes, we are, God gives something to Paul and God gives something to Barnabas, right? And maybe they couldn't recognize this at one time in a peaceful way, and they had to do it this way. But the spirit, again, both hearts are in the right place. Yeah. And that brought them back again and brought the service and the mission and the ministry back again to where it's supposed to be. Thoughts? Go ahead.
No, I can't make it a complete thought.
Okay. Yes.
What if your mind leans more towards like one way or the other, like more of love or more of truth? And like obviously you're aware maybe through like different scenarios that, you know, it sounds to me like you're more right-sided on in your brain or more left-sided, like more of like
Okay.
the more emotional, more logical, whatever you want to like label it as. But then
Yes.
like how do you kind of then tap into the weaker side that you have of yourself, whether it's the truth or the love, whichever one like you have?
I think it goes back again to that's a beautiful question, Julian. I think it goes back again to actually how honest I am with myself about the reason, right? Because a lot of times, again, you know, if you look back again to that concept of truth or love, right? No, the truth because the truth actually feeds on, again, my ego, feeds on my understanding that I know what's right and what's wrong, right? And the other person doesn't know anything, right? Yet the you know, so once you recognize that and be very, very clear about the actual motivation, the actual reason of which direction I'm going, right? Even if I recognize that that might not be the right reason or the right motivation, that's where I come and say to God, well, that's what it is, right? It's not easy to switch that, right? Okay, well, I'm very, very, very much convinced that I am right. And the way going by the book is the right way, right? And I cannot see anything else other than that, right? But if I go and dig deeper to myself and recognize it's not actually about just the truth, it's about myself, right? But I cannot change that, right? That's what, at least that's why we say, you know what, we need, like, especially in big decisions or stuff like that, we need, and even in small things, we always talk it, like when we talk with the pre-marriage counseling, like if there's a conflict, you know, first thing we say, set a time and a place to talk, right? So not at the time, not at the moment, because now there are too many emotions, too many pride, too many things that are happening. So it's not going to help now. Okay? Set a time and a place. Okay, let's take some time just to pray more, to, you know, take away any kind of emotions, any kind of influence, and come and see, allow God to work, allow God to change.
Or what if it's the flip side? You're working towards the love, but you lack habit.
It's the same thing, because sometimes you're doing this to avoid conflict or to avoid confrontation,
Yeah.
right? Or to avoid, so am I really doing this because I'm really loving the person or because it's just the easier way? Yeah,
Look at St. Paul and say, you know, you're being too dramatic, or go to St. Barnabas and say you're being too.
it'd be too lenient. Exactly, exactly.
Come over to this side, but
Right, right. Yes, yes. But again, the obvious thing, whether you're on this side or this side, the obvious thing that you're both guided by the Spirit. So they allowed, even if that decision is the wrong decision, the Spirit will what? Will fix it. And that's a very important fact. If we, like, you know, again, I might have said this before, but one of the beautiful things that I personally learned is, like, you know, at the end of the day, like, Lord, please fix whatever mistakes I made, right? You know, all of us, you know, you talk to people, you interact with people, again, whether, you know, work or family or spouse or relationship or whatever, and we do mistakes, we make mistakes, right? But if we're not aware of that, not even aware that the potential that I can make mistake, it will never be fixed. Right? But coming at the end of the day, Lord, please, you know, fix whatever disasters I caused today. Right? And sometimes you're not even aware. You might have, you know, looked at somebody or said something or got, you know, got irritated because of a small, silly thing, but just made the big thing out of it, right? For me and for other people. This encounter is amazing. It's beautiful. I mean, it's just like 2-3 verses, but it's just like a whole life experience. When to say something, when not to say it, how to look at it, how to surrender, what is the purpose, what is the reason, how you can see God's hand working, all those things. Yeah. I was hoping to jump into 16, but well, we have 5 minutes, so we can just touch on it. So after all this, again, now we have two sets of missionaries, right? We have Paul and Silas, and we have Barnabas and Mark. So from now on, we'll pretty much focus more and more on the mission of Paul. Right? So what happened here is, again, and this is back again to what we're talking about. Like, okay, they went to Antioch, and then from there they said, let's go around and visit the cities that of the churches that we started before. And then they wanted to do their own plan. But then again, it's not clear how did this happen, but it says that the Spirit what prevented them. How is that? I have no idea. Nobody can tell. You know, whether it's like, we know that later on he saw a vision, a man in Macedonia said, come across and help us. But how were they prevented from going to Galatia and to Bithynia? It doesn't say. It doesn't say. So, and that's the beauty of the mystery of the scripture. Sometimes just gonna leave it to this point, you know. So let's read it and just kind of at least get a start before we conclude today. So Paul came also to Derbe and to Lystra. Let me bring that. So you have the screen here still, right?
Yeah.
But for you guys online, let me just read from my phone, and then I can share the map with you again. Here we go. Okay, again, the yellow, not the yellow, the blue, the blue line here, guys, is where for the Zoom, not for you. This is a different map. Like there's no yellow here. There's no blue here. It's red. But you can see this again that this is the second, I guess it says here, the second missionary journey from here. So what happened is Paul came also to Derbe and to Lystra. You can see where they are on top here, right? There's Derbe and there's Lystra. You can see him. And there he found a disciple was there named Timothy, the son of a Jewish woman who was a believer, but his father was a Greek, right? That's in Lystra. Most likely he found him in the first journey, throughout the first journey, and he followed him and he baptized him, and then he believed at that time, and then he was baptized later on. He was well spoken of by the brothers of Lystra and Iconium. Paul wanted Timothy to accompany him and took him and circumcised him because of the Jews who were in those places, for they all knew that his father was a Greek. As they went on their way through the cities, they delivered to them for observance the decisions that had been reached by the apostles and elders who were in Jerusalem. Remember, these areas, they already were there once before, right? In the first journey. Now they're going the other way, right? Because they went all the way to Lystra and then to Iconium and Derbe, and then all this, if you remember the first journey. So now they're going there and they're delivering to them the message. These are all Gentiles, the message that the Church of Jerusalem said that, you know, don't worry, you don't have to worry about that circumcision thing. You're just make sure to observe those things, right? So the churches were strengthened in the faith and they increased in numbers daily. So that's where the contradiction comes. Like if actually you're coming to them and delivering the message of, you know, you don't have to do circumcision, yet he did what with Timothy? He circumcised him. Why is that? I mean, we kind of touched on this a little bit last week when Juliana asked the question, but maybe it's time to go through it real quick again here. Why do you think that is? Because what?
Something related to the Jewish.
Yes, but why? Again, he's just bringing a letter saying, you know what, you guys don't have to be circumcised.
Didn't Timothy want it or no?
No, it says that, you know, he took him. Paul wanted Timothy to accompany him, and he took him and circumcised him. So it doesn't seem like he had any option here.
Say it last week, that's like about kind of what we were talking about earlier, not to be a stumbling block.
Yes, yes. So here, that's very, very important. Circumcising Timothy was not for Timothy's salvation, but it's for what? For the service, right? You know that you are going to people who are going to question, going to ask, and going to do all those things, right? And this man is very known. His father is Greek. He's known that he is Greek, right? So not to put the service in jeopardy, not to to make the service actually a stumbling block for the Jews. Like, no, this guy is actually good. But that doesn't mean by no means that he's doing this for Timothy's own salvation, right? This was the struggle before. Like, people, in order to become Christian, to reach the salvation, you need to go through circumcision. Like, no, that's not going to do anything to you. Okay? And that's, again, the beauty and the wisdom and the direction by the Spirit, right? It's not, so let me read to you what kind of, like, just to make it clear. Timothy would be working with both Jews and Gentiles in the churches. And it was essential that he not offend them, right? That was why Paul had Timothy circumcised. Again, it was not a matter of Timothy's salvation or personal character, but rather of avoiding serious problems that would surely become stumbling blocks as the men sought to serve the Lord. And we know later on that Timothy became actually almost the successor of Paul, right? In certain places. So you want to make sure that he is not offending anybody, and he is not causing anybody to stumble because of that, right? But not, again, he didn't tell him, in order to be Christian, you have to be circumcised. So I'm going to do that in order because I know that you will be serving the Gentiles and serving the Jews at that time, and we don't want anything to happen. So let's do it this way. Brian, you want to say something?
If Timothy was not circumcised, then the conversation would always tend to be around that, and
yes,
not around the gospel and
right. It will take the attention. That's a great point, Brian. Thank you. It will take all the focus from the message itself into Timothy's behavior and Timothy's, origin and status, and whether he is circumcised or not, and right. So he wants to free anything from blocking the message itself. Thank you, Brian. Good point. So with that, you see, again, God is opening a door for them right now, right? They went and here, and then, as you will see, if we go back to the text itself, after that, it says right there that that they start they went on their way through the cities. They delivered to them for observance the decisions that had been reached by the apostles and elders who were in Jerusalem. People were happy, joyful. The churches were strengthened in the faith, and they increased in numbers daily. Now, this is again happening in Derbe and Lystra, which are, again, as you saw in the map, like part of Turkey, Minor Asia. And then from there, Paul and Silas again thought that, okay, well, God is opening the door for us here, so let's go deeper inland into Turkey, into Minor Asia, again going all the way to Galatia and up on north, Bithynia and Pontus, and that was their own desire, right? But as we always say, and as we've been talking about this before, God is doing a very good job always in doing what? Interrupting our plans. Remember that? Always, he interrupts our plans. Yes. In a way that can sometimes, again, like, why is this happening, right? Okay, I mean, the logic is we are here. Like, why would you have us cross the sea into a different continent, right? Which will even becomes more and more puzzling when they go there to preach, and all what they are seeing is what? Women at the river washing. So, and for a Jew to what I was reading, actually, some of the rabbis' teaching said it's better to die than to preach to a woman. It's that understanding, and that's kind of like very, very, very hard mind, right? So for them, again, especially for Paul, right? Like we were right here. We're like a few miles away from that whole big territory, and it's gonna be ours. We're gonna bring people to the church and everything, and yet you are asking us to go to a different continent, and here we are, and there's nothing. There's nothing. So the idea of opening door and closing door is just kind of like, big puzzle. I'm sure all of us at one point or another kind of had that experience, like, why is this happening? And why you open the door and then all of a sudden it's closed, and then yet you open another place and I go there and it seems like it's closed, but yet it's not very close, and all that confusion, right? But we'll learn more and more as we get into chapter 16 in 2 weeks, how the Spirit leads, and not necessarily we understand. Sometimes you just have to follow. Just, whatever door open, just go through it. And if it's shut, then it'll be shut. Right? Don't waste your energy or time trying to figure out why. Because at one point you never understand why, but just kind of don't miss the open door because you are crying about a closed door. If that makes sense. Yeah. So yeah, let's stop at this point. Next Friday is Good Friday, so we're not here, and then following Friday, God willing, we'll be back again, going through chapter 16. So I pray that we really have a good, blessed time through the Holy Week, and focusing on God's love and God's sacrificial love, and how we can be part of that whole journey. Any other questions or comments? All right, we shall see you in 2 weeks. Blessed Holy Week to everybody. And let's say, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not to temptation, but deliver us from the evil. In Christ Jesus our Lord. Thine the kingdom, the power, the glory. Amen. Go in peace. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you, Abuna.
Bona, thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Abuna.
Okay.